Recruitment program.
Guys, we're gonna open the webinar now. Thank you.
From some like contract books from DHL. I got a message about that. Estimated Tuesday.
Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu.
If you get something.
Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu. Perkenalkan saya Sasti Hornisa, MC pada hari ini. Izinkan saya untuk memberi tahu hal-hal sebagaimana yang akan ditayangkan di screen Bapak Ibu sekalian. Sebagai informasi juga, untuk webinar hari ini dilengkapi dengan fitur terjemahan Bahasa Indonesia dan Bahasa Inggris yang dapat dilihat di icon bola dunia yang ada di Zoom Bapak Ibu sekalian. Sebelumnya mohon kesediaan Bapak Ibu untuk mengisi daftar hadir di link bit.ly/daftar hadir SPU Adb. Dan saya akan memperkenalkan dengan Pak Reza dari Bahasa Global untuk menjelaskan lebih lanjut tentang fitur terjemahan Bahasa Indonesia dan Inggris tersebut. Silakan Pak Reza.
Baik, terima kasih. Selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Izinkan kami dari Bahasa Global untuk membacakan panduan cara menggunakan fitur penerjemahan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Allow us from Bahasa Global to present the user guide how to use the interpretation feature. Berikut panduan cara mengaktifkan fitur penerjemahan pada aplikasi Zoom apabila Bapak atau Ibu menggunakan laptop atau PC. Pada bagian pojok kanan bawah akan terdapat lambang bola dunia. Mohon untuk diklik Language Interpretation dan memilih bahasa yang Bapak atau Ibu ingin dengarkan. Mohon tidak perlu mute original audio dan tidak perlu pindah channel saat berbicara. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are accessing the Zoom using a laptop or PC, simultaneous interpretation services are available. You can go to the bottom right of your screen. There you will find globe icon or language interpretation button. Click it and select the language that you wish to listen. We recommend you to not mute original audio. If you would like to speak, you don't have to turn off the interpretation button as well. Next slide. Apabila Bapak atau Ibu mengakses meeting kali ini menggunakan mobile phone, fitur penerjemahan secara simultan juga tersedia. Bila Bapak atau Ibu ke pojok kanan bawah akan ada 3 titik. Jika diklik akan ada language interpretation, lalu klik, Pilih bahasa yang Bapak atau Ibu ingin dengarkan, dan tidak perlu mute original audio. Dan terakhir, jangan lupa klik dan bila sudah selesai. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are accessing the Zoom using a mobile phone, simultaneous interpretation services are available. You can go to the bottom right of your screen. There you will find 3 dots. Click it and click Language Interpretation. And select the language that you wish to listen. We also recommend you to not mute original audio. And don't forget to click Done when you have selected. Thank you and have a productive webinar. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih dari tim Bahasa Global. Sekali lagi untuk Bapak Ibu sekalian, mengingatkan kembali, mungkin ada yang baru masuk. Di Zoom webinar kali ini kami menyediakan fitur translasi yang dapat dilihat di Zoom Bapak Ibu sekalian dengan mengklik ikon bola dunia dan interpretation, dan Bapak Ibu bisa memilih bahasa mana yang akan digunakan untuk mendengarkan webinar ini. Dan untuk daftar hadir hari ini, mohon Bapak Ibu bisa dapat mengisi daftar hadir di bit.ly/daftarhadir SPW IDB. Acara ini akan dimulai pada pukul 9. Mohon kesediaan Bapak Ibu untuk menunggu dan mengisi daftar hadir yang telah diinformasikan di dalam layar. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sasti Hornisa, and I will be your Master of Ceremony in this morning on Tuesday, 3rd of August 2021, in our big event, Business Opportunity Seminar with Asian Development Bank. First of all, let us pray and praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Because of His bless and mercy, we can come together without any obstacle here with healthy condition in the seminar. Second, let us greet and pray to our beloved Prophet Muhammad SAW, who had brought us to the path of light and left the darkness in this life. Your Excellency, Ibu Sarah Sadika, Deputy Chairman of Strategy and Policy Development LKPP, the Honorable Ibu Dwi Wahyuni Kartianingsih, Director of Business Climate Development and International Cooperation LKPP, the Honorable Mr. Jeffrey Taylor, Director of Procurement Division 1, Asian Development Bank. Also, I would like to welcome our honorable speakers, Mr. Jan Slater, Chief of Transport Sector Group ADB, Mr. Eric Kanshi, Senior Water Specialist ADB, Ms. Jenny Chu, Procurement Specialist ADB, and Mr. Bahtiar, General Manager Operation PTPP. And to all of the participants who have taken the time to attend the seminar. First of all, I would like to inform you that this seminar is a collaborative event between LKPP and Asian Development Bank. And the purpose of this seminar is to obtain information about business opportunities and share experiences regarding success stories in participating in procurement funded by development partners. So now, allow me to read several sequences of our agenda. First, we will hear the welcoming remarks from the Deputy Chairman of Strategy and Policy Development LKPP, followed by the introductory remarks from Director of Procurement Division 1 ADB, and the next agenda will be a presentation from our speakers and Q&A session. And closing from Director of Business Climate Development and International Cooperation LKPP. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Ibu Sarah, Deputy Chairman for Strategy and Policy Development LKPP. Ibu Sarah has been working for more than 25 years for the government and has different variety of experiences and knowledge in government procurement. Currently, she is responsible to develop government procurement strategy and policy, public-private partnership, and international cooperation, such as FTA and comprehensive economic partnership. Ibu Sarah earned master's degree in law and policy from Northeastern University, Boston. Let me invite Ibu Sarah, who is here with us. Good morning, Ibu.
Selamat pagi, Mbak.
Ya, selamat pagi, Ibu. Saya persilakan. Ibu Sarah, the time and floor are yours.
Oke, terima kasih Mbak Sasti. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Yang saya hormati Ibu Dwi Wahyuni, Direktur Iklim Usaha dan Kerjasama Internasional. Yang saya hormati Bapak Jeff Taylor, Director for Procurement Financial Portfolio Division 1 dari ADB. Yang saya hormati Pak James Leather, Chief of Transport Sector Group dari ADB. Yang saya hormati Pak Eric, Senior Water Specialist dari ADB. Yang saya hormati Ibu Jenny Chu, Procurement Specialist dari Procurement Portfolio and Financial Management Department. Dan juga teman-teman sahabat saya yang sangat saya hormati dan banggakan, Ibu Keiko Kaisho, Ibu Olga, dan Ibu Suharyani, Senior Procurement Specialist dari Indonesia Resident Mission. Tentu juga yang saya hormati Bapak Ibu, pimpinan tinggi Pratama di lingkungan Kedeputian Pengembangan Strategi dan Kebijakan, serta di lingkungan LKPP, yang saya hormati dan saya banggakan Bapak Ibu perwakilan asosiasi, Bapak Ibu pelaku usaha, dan seluruh teman-teman yang hadir pada kesempatan pagi hari ini. Pertama-tama dipanjatkan puji syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala atas nikmat sehatnya, sehingga pada pagi hari ini kita dapat berkumpul bersama walaupun masih dilakukan secara virtual dalam kegiatan seminar peluang usaha, pengadaan barang jasa dengan pendanaan mitra pembangunan. Bapak Ibu, Mungkin sebagian di antara Bapak Ibu yang baru bergabung dengan kegiatan kami pada pagi hari ini, sebenarnya kegiatan ini sudah kita mulai minggu yang lalu, yaitu sama kegiatannya seminar peluang usaha pengadaan barang jasa dengan mitra pembangunan UNDP. Tapi pada pagi hari ini kita berkesempatan bahkan dalam 2 hari, hari ini dan besok, kita memiliki kesempatan yang luas untuk memahami guidelines dan juga peluang-peluang usaha pada proyek-proyek Asian Development Bank atau yang biasa disebut dengan ADB. Mudah-mudahan sebagian dari Bapak Ibu hadir pada kesempatan minggu lalu, tapi kalaupun tidak, saya kira ini kesempatan yang baik yang bisa kita manfaatkan untuk kepentingan pengembangan kompetensi dan juga peluang usaha kita. Jadi Bapak Ibu, istilah mitra pembangunan, mudah-mudahan Bapak Ibu sudah banyak yang mengetahuinya. Tapi sebenarnya mitra pembangunan itu sendiri adalah istilah yang diperkenalkan di sekitar tahun 2008, 2009 gitu, untuk merujuk pada negara atau lembaga pemberi pinjaman hibah luar negeri atau pada masa yang lebih lalu, yang lebih lampau dikenal dengan istilah donor atau lender. Perubahan istilah ini tentunya tidak hanya mengubah penamaannya saja, tapi juga mencerminkan perubahan konsep hubungan dan kerjasama antara pemerintah dengan mitranya. Kalau zaman dulu, sebagian dari kita mengenal mungkin istilah seperti donor driven atau kebutuhan pembangunan yang dalam tanda kutip didorong oleh donor, maka pola hubungan tersebut sudah berubah jauh. Pemerintah dan mitra pembangunan saat ini lebih menghargai, lebih support, bahkan sangat mendukung program-program prioritas dan arah pembangunan kita. Kegiatan seminar pada hari ini, sebagaimana kami sampaikan, merupakan kelanjutan. Jadi ini serial. Minggu lalu sudah kita mulai dengan UNDP, minggu ini kita ketemu dengan ADB, insya Allah minggu depan atau waktu yang akan kita tentukan, kita sepakati, kami akan mengundang kembali Bapak Ibu untuk kita gali aturan dan juga pengalaman, juga peluang-peluang usaha dari World Bank atau Bank Dunia dan juga Islamic Development Bank. Jadi secara rutin kegiatan ini akan kita coba laksanakan secara bertahap dan juga mengundang tentunya teman-teman dari mitra pembangunan. Kegiatan ini adalah kolaborasi antara LKPP dan mitra pembangunan. Dan kegiatan ini sebenarnya adalah contoh nyata bahwa mitra pembangunan memiliki kesamaan tujuan, bekerja dan berjalan seiring sejalan dengan kita. Kegiatan seminar peluang usaha untuk memahami regulasi kesempatan berusaha pada proyek-proyek yang didanai oleh PHLN sebenarnya kegiatan yang baru untuk kita semua, baik di LKPP ataupun juga program LKPP kepada Bapak Ibu. Dan diharapkan ini dapat terus dan rutin dilakukan. Dan ini adalah sesuai dengan arahan Pak Kepala LKPP yang selalu mengharapkan terobosan-terobosan baru. Bapak Ibu sekalian, peserta seminar yang saya hormati, saya ingin sedikit kembali dan merujuk kepada beberapa regulasi yang menjadi arah dan prioritas pembangunan. Sebagaimana diketahui bersama, pada tahun yang lalu pemerintah telah mengundangkan Undang-Undang Nomor 11 Tahun 2020 tentang Cipta Kerja. Pada prinsipnya, Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja dimaksudkan untuk memberikan kemudahan berusaha melalui antara lain penyederhanaan perizinan berusaha, persyaratan investasi, memberikan kesempatan dan afirmasi untuk usaha mikro dan kecil, serta mendorong pemanfaatan produk dalam negeri, jasa dalam negeri dalam rangka mendukung kemandirian bangsa. Hal-hal yang diamanahkan dalam Undang-Undang Nomor 11 ini tentunya menjadi orientasi ataupun tujuan pengadaan barang jasa pemerintah yang saat ini diatur dalam Peraturan Presiden Nomor 12 Tahun 2021 dan Perpres Nomor 12 ini merupakan penyempurnaan dari Perpres Nomor 16 Tahun 2018 tentang pengadaan barang jasa pemerintah. Amanah Undang-Undang 11 dan juga Perpres 12 tentang pengadaan barang jasa merupakan dasar pemikiran atau konsepsi dari semua peraturan LKPP, dan peraturan LKPP ini pun merupakan aturan teknis dan turunan dari Perpres Nomor 12 Tahun 2021. Di antara berbagai peraturan LKPP tersebut, terdapat peraturan LKPP nomor 10 tahun 2018 tentang pedoman pelaksanaan tender atau seleksi internasional, dan saat ini peraturan LKPP nomor 10 tersebut sedang kami lakukan revisi. Pada revisi peraturan LKPP nomor 10, kami menekankan 3 strategi pengadaan barang jasa untuk mendukung arah pembangunan, khususnya kesempatan berusaha dalam kita akan menyiapkan dan menyusun regulasi atau pedoman yang dapat mendukung kesempatan berusaha, baik berusaha di dalam negeri ataupun di luar negeri. Regulasi yang lebih sesuai dengan dinamika yang kita hadapi atau terjadi di Indonesia ataupun secara global. Strategi yang kedua adalah untuk meningkatkan awareness atau kapasitas pelaku usaha untuk siap dan mampu berkompetisi menghasilkan output ataupun kinerja terbaik untuk proyek-proyek pembangunan yang dibiayai oleh baik rupiah murni ataupun juga oleh pinjaman hibah luar negeri. Lebih jauh lagi, tentunya kami sangat berharap pelaku-pelaku usaha kita siap dan mampu berkompetisi untuk proyek-proyek di luar negeri. Strategi yang ketiga, yang terakhir, adalah penguatan hubungan kerjasama pemerintah dengan mitra-mitra pembangunan, antara lain melalui forum dialog ataupun diskusi. Ketiga strategi ini akan kita laksanakan secara bertahap dan sudah dimulai sejak beberapa waktu yang lalu dengan kita lakukan revisi peraturan LKPP nomor 10. Bapak Ibu peserta seminar yang saya hormati, pada hari ini kita berkesempatan untuk mempelajari aturan, policy, bisnis proses, tips, ataupun peluang-peluang usaha pada proyek-proyek yang dibiayai oleh Asian Development Bank, baik proyek yang berada di Indonesia ataupun di negara-negara lainnya. Sebagaimana kita ketahui, ADB adalah salah satu mitra pembangunan yang terbesar di Indonesia. Bahkan hubungan antara pemerintah dengan ADB itu sudah dimulai sejak sekitar tahun 1966. Jadi bisa dibayangkan betapa banyak ragam dan juga jumlah proyek-proyek pembangunan yang telah dikerjasamakan selama ini dengan ADB. Selain dari banyaknya proyek dan ragamnya kegiatan yang dikerjasamakan, selama ini kita juga memperoleh manfaat atau hal yang positif yang kita terima dari kerjasama ini berupa tentunya pengetahuan, keterampilan, pengalaman, terutama pengalaman dalam mengelola proyek-proyek pembangunan. ADB juga sangat familiar dengan prosedur pengadaan barang jasa pemerintah dan juga tentunya aturan-aturan teknis pengadaan yang terkait aturan-aturan teknis pengadaan yang ada di negara kita, yang ada di pemerintah. ADB juga memiliki anggota lebih dari 60 negara di wilayah Asia dan Pasifik, di mana setiap negara anggota tentunya memiliki karakteristik, kematangan, dan juga kebutuhan yang berbeda-beda. Oleh karena itu, pertemuan pada pagi hari ini akan sangat menarik karena dapat memberikan manfaat tidak hanya karena kita bisa belajar atau memahami peraturan, tapi juga pengalaman ADB, kita juga bisa membandingkan bagaimana proyek-proyek pembangunan yang dikelola atau dikerjasamakan dengan ADB di negara-negara lainnya. Pada kesempatan ini kita juga beruntung karena memperoleh narasumber yang kompeten dan memiliki pengalaman yang panjang, baik dalam penyusunan policy, procurement policy, maupun dalam mengelola proyek-proyek pembangunan di Indonesia ataupun di negara lainnya. Bahkan narasumber yang akan memberikan materi adalah pimpinan dan juga expert yang bekerja di kantor pusat ADB di Manila. Jadi headquarters ADB yang ada di Manila, yang biasa menangani berbagai negara yang akan menjadi negara-negara yang menjadi anggota ADB. Biasanya waktu mereka sangat terbatas, tapi alhamdulillah mereka menyediakan waktu yang cukup untuk kita dapat berdiskusi dengan bebas. Bahkan ADB yang mengusulkan agar seminar ini dilakukan dalam 2 hari, yaitu hari ini dan besok, dan dibagi menjadi 4 sektor yang merupakan sektor yang paling sering dikerjasamakan dengan ADB. Jadi insya Allah kita banyak memperoleh manfaat dari kerjasama. Kegiatan seminar pada hari ini juga merupakan wujud implementasi dari strategi kedua, yaitu awareness dan peningkatan kapasitas pelaku usaha, sekaligus juga strategi ketiga, yaitu dukungan kerjasama dari ADB sebagai mitra pembangunan. Kegiatan hari ini bertujuan untuk memberikan informasi dan penjelasan kepada Bapak Ibu, pelaku usaha dan asosiasi tentang pengalaman, praktek terbaik internasional, regulasi bisnis proses ADB, dan lain sebagainya. Seminar ini juga dimaksudkan untuk dapat meningkatkan kompetensi dan pemahaman pelaku usaha sehingga dapat merespon proyek-proyek yang didanai oleh ADB. Sebagai contoh, bagaimana Bapak Ibu dapat betul-betul memahami TOR yang disusun untuk proyek ADB. Bagaimana Bapak Ibu dapat merespon TOR-nya dengan suatu dokumen penawaran yang baik dan juga berkualitas sesuai dengan harapan. Bagaimana Bapak Ibu dapat memahami bisnis proses dan prosedur ADB, serta bagaimana pada akhirnya Bapak Ibu sekalian dapat memenangkan kesempatan tersebut. Seminar ini juga dimaksudkan untuk menilai kapasitas kita, kemampuan kita, dan juga melihat-lihat peluang ataupun kesempatan yang ada. Bapak Ibu sekalian, kegiatan seminar peluang usaha pengadaan pada proyek-proyek yang didanai PHLN sudah dilaksanakan pada minggu yang lalu, Rabu 28 Juli, lalu dengan fokus prosedur pengadaan UNDP, lalu pada hari ini dan besok tanggal 3 dan 4 Agustus, itu dengan fokus pengadaan barang jasa oleh ADB, dan kita sedang mengusahakan waktu agar seminar peluang usaha juga dapat kita lakukan dengan Bank Dunia dan Islamic Development Bank. Terakhir, sebelum penutup, kami sampaikan terima kasih terutama kepada Bapak Ibu peserta atas kehadirannya, kesediaan waktunya, tenaga, dan pikiran Bapak Ibu yang berkenan hadir pada pagi hari ini. Tentunya juga terima kasih kepada Pak Kepala, walaupun beliau pada kesempatan ini tidak bisa bersama-sama dengan kita, atas berbagai kesempatan dan juga semangat yang selalu diberikan mendorong berbagai tujuan berbagai kegiatan agar dapat mencapai tujuan pengadaan secara baik dan dalam waktu yang singkat. Untuk menyemangati Bapak Ibu peserta seminar, izinkan saya menyitir pemikiran seorang CEO Apple yang sudah meninggal dunia tahun 2011, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs mengatakan bahwa kita harus terus merasa lapar dan bodoh atau foolish agar kita selalu tetap ingin tahu, ingin belajar, dan berani mengambil risiko untuk melakukan sesuatu yang lebih baik lagi, walaupun mungkin orang lain mengatakan tidak mungkin. Mudah-mudahan quote ini dapat memberikan inspirasi, semangat, dan juga percaya diri bagi kita semua untuk bekerja lebih keras dan lebih baik lagi. Finally, please allow me to convey highly appreciation to Pak Jeff Taylor, to Pak James, Pak Eric, Ibu Jenny Chu, Ibu Keiko, Ibu Olga, dan juga Ibu Yani, and of course to ADB for continuing support to the government. The seminar reflects not only strong and respectful cooperation between ADB and the government, but also shows so many important rules and values. Your openness to share knowledge, skill, and experience, as well as opportunity to participate in your project in the future, give us strong motivations and also confidence to move forward. At last, I would like to quote from a person who I admire, Steve Jobs. He said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish. We need to push ourselves to stay eager to learn, to take risks, and keep trying to do what others say cannot be done." I hope it can inspire all of us to try and do more and move forward. Demikian yang dapat disampaikan. Mohon maaf untuk hal-hal yang kurang berkenan. Selamat berdiskusi dan sharing. Silahkan bebas bertanya, bebas menggali informasi, bebas untuk mendalami. Semoga apa yang kita lakukan pada pagi hari ini membawa manfaat. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ibu Sarah, for the welcoming remarks. Moving to the next agenda, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Jeffrey Taylor, the Director of Procurement Division 1. Mr. Jeff Taylor is the Director of Procurement Division 1 of ADB's Procurement, Portfolio, and Financial Management Department. His division covers ADB's portfolio in Central, West, and South Asia. Mr. Taylor has been working on the public procurement of infrastructure projects for 30 years, and the last 13 of which have been with ADB. Mr. Taylor is a chartered member of the Institute of Purchasing and Supply and holds a Master of Science in Procurement. To Mr. Jeffrey Taylor, good morning.
Good morning, Sasti. Thank you for the very kind introduction and the very inspiring words of the Deputy Chairperson, Sadika. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with you, my colleagues in Indonesia, my ADB colleagues in New Zealand, in the UK. We really are operating virtually ourselves at this current time as well. I would like to extend my thanks and ADB's thanks to our host organization and partner in this webinar, LKPP, the National Public Procurement Agency, and would like to thank you for organizing this event. As you may know, ADB is a multilateral development bank owned by 68 countries, and our aim is to improve the livelihood of our developing member countries across the region. And our portfolio has been continuously growing over the years. It currently stands at $102 billion on the sovereign side of open and ongoing projects. And it's complemented by $17 billion of open projects and investment activities in our non-sovereign portfolio. To explain the difference, the sovereign portfolio is financed with loans guaranteed by the borrowing member government, and the non-sovereign is lending on private sector principles. These types of events are very important to us because I actually don't build anything. I don't make anything as a procurement director at ADB. It's the consultants and the contractors that are contracted by our clients and our partners and EAs and IAs that actually implement ADB and government finance projects. So it is essential that we have effective outreach and partnerships with both our borrowing member countries, but also the private sector, which is why these events are so important to us. Last year, ADB increased its lending by $20 billion to support healthcare systems. And at the very end of the year in December, we also approved another $9 billion of potential lending to support our clients' vaccine programs. Also in 2020, ADB is a very significant purchaser of consulting services on its own account, with trust funds entrusted to it and its own resources. And last year, 2020, saw us spend $206 million on consulting services for ADB. And that included close to 4,000 contracts with individual consultants and 216 contracts with firms. In addition, there is a similar amount of consulting opportunities in ADB's lending portfolio, perhaps slightly larger at about $300 million, assisting our borrowers to design and implement the projects that we are jointly financing. Coupled with the growth of the portfolio, we're seeing greater complexity. I've been doing this quite a long time, 33 years, and the old adage, ADB stands for dams and bridges, is no longer true. The contracts and the projects that we are financing are becoming increasingly more complex. And that means we need the market to respond with greater sophistication. We're beginning to look at smart cities, smart grids, renewable, much higher technology and more demanding. There is increasing need for good civil works contractors and consulting services. And we have shifted our emphasis away from just price to allow more qualitative dimensions in the procurement that we do. Our colleagues at LKPP will be aware of this, and Gigi actually worked with us for a while through these reforms, and will be a very good resource to give you more insight to ADB. Many countries need consulting services, not just for traditional projects implementation, but more and more complex, such as detailed engineering design, large infrastructure, construction supervision, and the traditional engineering role. And a recent trend, due to the more complex nature of the projects we're seeing, is greater on broader associations as consulting firms and contractors complement their expertise with expertise at companies that may have traditionally been competitors, but also to bring in domestic expertise and know-how as well. That's equally important in the portfolio. Large multinational firms are actually becoming more globalized and working more closely with domestic partners. Many potential domestic partners, I hope, will be here. Those of you that already know ADB will know that every year we hold the Business Opportunities Fair in Manila. I was actually tasked about 10 years ago with doing the first one. And what started out as a relatively small event has become an event with over 1,000 in-person participants. Recognizing the challenge and recognizing the need to ensure health and safety, we've stepped away from those big in-person events, but we're very pleased that we were able last year to hold a similar size virtual Business Opportunities Fair in September of last year. And we will be doing the same this year. So I would invite you all to participate in that, as well as these excellent events. And whilst the pandemic has presented many challenges, and many of them not pleasant, it has presented some opportunities, such as this one, and the ability to reach out more efficiently and more often to key stakeholders, such as consultants and contractors and LPKK, without having to do months and months of logistic planning, without having to get on planes and the environmental damage that does. So there have been positives out of this, and I think these kinds of events are one of them, and long may they continue. I hope one day soon, though, to be able to do in-person events, because nothing can replace meeting new friends and making new acquaintances, because we are basically social animals. But these virtual events are actually a very good tool that we will intend to continue. At today's events, we will focus on ADB's operations covering transport and water sectors. We will also have a presentation from Jenny, who I hired a few years ago now, and I'm very pleased with that, who will give you some insight to the arcane ADB procurement processes, so you can better understand how we work, and so you can better understand the opportunities and how to work on the projects that we finance. And the goal in this is actually to improve project outcomes. It's not just because we are nice, we try to be nice, but the better you are informed, the better you are able to respond to our clients' needs, and the better development outcomes that we will achieve. Our aim is to continue collaboration with business communities around the world, most especially in our DMCs, our developing member countries, because that has the dual impact of both better designed and implemented projects, but also it channels resources to those firms, enabling them to grow economically as well. We very much value the cooperation of our business partners in the preparation of and implementation of our projects. And I hope that some of the things that you learn here will enable you to win ADB finance contracts. So I will now hand over back to our hosts with my thanks. I will hang around for the rest of the seminar, of course, and be available for questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jeff Taylor. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is the main event, which is the presentation from our speakers as well as discussions that will be guided directly by Mr. Theodore Sutarto as the Coordinator for International Cooperation of LKPP. Good morning, Pak Theo.
Good morning, Mbak Sasti.
Yeah, Pak Theo, the time is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasant opportunity to have this business opportunity seminar with the Asian Development Bank. Before we start to our main event, I would like to remind all the participants that has questions during presentation could write their question on Q&A section, which is available on the bottom right corner, or you can use the raise hand icon, which is next to the Q&A icon. And please to also ask questions in Bahasa Indonesia, should you like, since our colleague from Bahasa Global Interpreter will help us to deliver the questions later on. And a quick reminder that the material link for all the presentation will be put on the chat as the last speaker deliver their presentations. And now move forward, we do here have a fourth speaker with us today. The first speaker is Mr. James Leder. We are lucky to have the chief of the transport sector group of the Asian Development Bank with us here today. So Mr. James Leder has 30 years of experience on transport and working internationally with development organizations, government, private sectors, and research institutions. He leads the ADB's transport sector operations and oversees the strategic direction of ADB's knowledge, technical, and financial support to its developing member countries, private sector clients, and partners. And Mr. Leder obtained his Master of Science in Transport Planning and Engineering from the Institute of Transport Studies, Leeds University, UK. Good morning, Mr. James.
Good morning.
Okay, I think without further ado, I would like to give the floor to you for your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can you upload the presentation, please? It's a great pleasure to be here. It's already been said how important these events are to get a better understanding of the type of work and the assistance we're providing to our clients, both government and private sector. What I would hope to do in the next few minutes is give a broad overview of the range of sector assistance within transport. It is quite broad, and I will go through this relatively quickly, but as was just said, the slides will be shared at the end. So if you do need to see some more of the details, it will be there. Next slide, please. One thing I want to highlight is the changes, the trends, and what this may bring to the future. Very much supporting what Jeff outlined, that our requests for assistance are becoming increasingly more complex. It's no longer standalone pieces of infrastructure. We're looking at much more integrated, cross-sectoral, certainly with different thematic approaches embedded within our pure infrastructure projects. But beyond that, a lot of policy advice and program development. This slide is just showing, again, was mentioned earlier, the increase in overall lending in the transport sector, as well as the share by different transport subsectors. Across the top, the pie charts are showing the overall lending volume, and you can see within each 10-year slice, the lending has almost doubled. In the 1990s, it was $880 million a year, which jumped to $2 billion per year in the 2000s, up to $4 billion, just over $4 billion per year in the 2010s. And we are in the current pipeline over the current 3 years, looking at around a $5 billion, obviously some impacts with COVID, but we are seeing a steady increase. And this share across ADB transport being one of the largest sectors, accounting for somewhere between 26% and rising up to almost 30% of ADB's lending. The other thing to demonstrate on here is the shift away from a heavy dominance in support in the roads subsector to a much more balanced portfolio incorporating still roads, but also incorporating rail, a lot of urban transport, and a range of others, primarily in aviation and ports subsector. So two trends are happening. One is a steady increase in the lending volumes in the transport sector, but also a broadening range of subsector support across all of the different transport modes. Next slide, please. The current pipeline, looking at the years, again, a steady change. There is quite a lumpy portfolio. You'll see in 2020, a dominance of the roads subsector again. If we're looking at some of the larger metro projects or rail projects, they tend to be very large projects, but a fewer in number compared to the road projects. And to put numbers with that, we may be looking at $1 to $2 billion on a rail project or an urban mass transit project, compared to say $100 to $200 million on a road assistance. So we need several roads to make up for one of those very large rail or mass transit projects as well. So there's quite a lumpy profile. And I'll get into some of the details on the projects as we go through each of the countries in each of our regions. Next slide, please. Within ADB, we have recently approved Strategy 2030, which sets out the guidelines or the principles of where we will be looking to support. This has been a push to bring in very much a thematic approach in response to global agendas on climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals, but also ensuring that we're broadening the support beyond pure infrastructure to make sure we're looking at what is the impacts of that infrastructure. So transport has a role to play in delivering Strategy 2030, but also in the 7 operational priorities, and those are the blue boxes in the middle. The overarching goal of ADB is still to address poverty and reduce inequalities. There's a geographical dimension. We play a strong role as a transport sector in supporting regional connectivity, urban transport in making cities more livable, all modes of transport, walking, cycling, mass transit systems, as well as policy control, parking measures, and the like. Rural development, rural connectivity, again, making sure that no one is left behind, and ensuring that all weather roads and access farm market roads are still provided. And in terms of the corporate targets, obviously transport has a significant role to play in climate change. It is one of the fastest growing emitters by sector, and a lot of that growth is coming from the Asian region. So we do need to look at how we can shift to less emitting modes of transport, but perhaps go beyond that in terms of full scale decarbonization of the transport sector. Governance and operations is becoming increasingly important. It's no longer just about the design and build of transport infrastructure. It is how that infrastructure is maintained and how it is operated. It's the use of the transport infrastructure that brings the development and economic growth, not just the infrastructure itself. And looking at gender and the role that transport can provide in ensuring that all in society get access. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So just very quickly, I will run through each of our regional departments, and we have 5 regional departments that are focusing on the sovereign side. And in addition to that, we have a private sector that looks at supporting our non-sovereign operations. Central West, showing the countries here, is in Central Asia, a lot of the former Soviet countries. Next slide, please. Our focus in much of this region is looking on that regional connectivity, and it's under the CAREC program, which is Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Program. So a strong focus on the international networks for road and railway and how that integrated multimodal transport system connects the various countries. Looking at those as economic corridors, and so industrial connectivity, cross-border infrastructure, as well as logistics services. It's not just purely on the transport infrastructure, road, rail, it's on the connectivity, it's on the dry ports, it's on the border points, and it's looking at that overall economic growth. Another area of focus is on road maintenance and road safety. Road safety is a common theme we will find across many of our government's requests. Unfortunately, with a large increase in the demand for travel, we see a lot more use of the roads, and therefore we're seeing a lot more accidents and deaths and fatalities on those roads. And so a number of governments are seeking how we can address those. Next slide, please. Within South Asia, highlighted in green there, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, we see quite a different range of projects here. Next slide, please. We are seeing, particularly in India, a large investment by the government in trying to address urban transport. And in many Asian cities, not just South Asia, but many East and Southeast Asian cities, the densities, the population sizes mean that mass transit must be the skeleton of any transport system. If cities are to be livable, people have to get around those cities effectively and affordably. And that can only really happen through public transport linked to non-motorized, the last mile connectivity. Asia cities cannot follow the North American private vehicle dominated urban sprawl. There just simply isn't the space. So in urban transport, we're focusing very much on mass transit systems, rail, as well as feeder bus services, the informal transport sector for that last mile connectivity, as well as cycling infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure as well. And I won't go through all of the list, but we can see a range of mass transit across much of India, but also in Karachi, Pakistan. And the type of assistance, running through the whole range of services, really: project preparation activities, the design, the civil works, E&M, rolling stock, environmental and management. And with this is a lot of the operational efficiencies. Many systems are the first ones of these scales within the cities, or indeed within countries in certain places. So there's a lot of institutional and capacity development components linked to the physical infrastructure. Next slide, please. In Bangladesh, we're seeing a lot of rail connectivity. SASEC is sort of the South Asian equivalent of the regional connectivity I mentioned in Central Asia. So we're seeing a lot of rail connections to bring the Bangladesh rail network to connecting to India, but also to the major ports Chittagong. And so it's looking at an integrated transport system between the major ports, linking those ports to the capital cities and onward to the neighboring countries as well. Similarly, a range of assistance in capacity development, technical assistance, in addition to the civil works and the operational through rolling stocks, electrification in certain cases, and E&M systems too in the rail subsector. Next slide, please. Also very important, the one very interesting project that may emerge shortly in India is a standalone road safety project. Road safety is an integral part of all our road projects. We do road safety audits at the design stage, construction stage, and pre-opening. But what the assistance we're trying to provide with India is looking at the safe system. So it's safe infrastructure, which is a given in all of our road projects, but it's also looking at safe vehicles, safe drivers, safe road users, the more vulnerable, the cyclists, the pedestrians, emergency response. So the medical side comes into that, the enforcement side and the education side. So we're looking at mixing with schools and the police under that full road, so safe system approach as well. So that is really where we're pushing within the road safety to try and support the government deliver impacts at scale and also across many different components of road safety. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. In Southeast region, we have quite a mixed range of countries at different levels of development, and as a result, they're seeking quite different type of support across ADB, but also in the transport sector. Next slide, please. And running through the countries very quickly, Cambodia and Laos are looking for assistance in more, they're still building up their main transport network. So we have provided support in the roads and the rail subsectors within those while we're still looking at the infrastructure development. In other countries like the Philippines, there has been under the current administration's Build, Build, Build program, a huge push to catch up on infrastructure investment. So at the moment, Philippines is one of our largest, and within transport, it is the largest borrowing country. We're providing support for bridges in and around the capital city, Manila. That's to build up the road network. We're providing support with commuter rail. We're providing support with urban mass transit systems in the capital as well as in Davao, the southern city. So looking at a whole range of different support, and also a technical assistance loan, which is really supporting the key infrastructure government agencies in terms of project preparation to bring them to a point where they can be delivered as well. So it's very much technical assistance, but at a scale where it's really supporting the government build up that project pipeline and prepare that project light pipeline through the early stages of delivery. So it's a different approach from a sort of one-off infrastructure project support. Vietnam, one of our largest countries in the past, but at the moment we're focusing on implementation and a few new projects, but there's a lot of information, and Myanmar is on hold at the moment. And in Indonesia, there's been a lot of discussions in terms of supporting the government, and that's more on the knowledge side and how that knowledge can come through in terms of supporting their development objectives, be that the archipelago nation nature of the country and the need to link the ferry systems or the maritime sector with the road subsector and the port development, or whether that's to address some of the challenges in cities like Jakarta where congestion and a lot of economic impacts of that congestion are being felt. Next slide, please. In East Asia, for ADB, this is People's Republic of China and Mongolia. Next slide, please. Again, quite different. Within the PRC, it's really looking at policy support in terms of addressing some of the externalities from the transport sector, particularly the air quality issue, the road safety issue, and their greenhouse gas emissions from the sector as well. So we're very much looking at traffic management systems, promotion of public transport, but more on that city transport system management and efficiency gains as opposed to pure infrastructure. In Mongolia, it is more similar to the Central Asian countries. The focus has really been looking at connectivity, both internationally and nationally, connecting the rural areas to Ulaanbaatar, the capital city, but also connecting Mongolia to its neighboring countries. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We're moving to the Pacific, obviously quite different, being the islands spread out quite considerably. Regional connectivity is a key issue here. Next slide, please. And we'll see that the Papua New Guinea is dominant in terms of the lending across the various countries within the transport sector. Next slide, please. But a sort of flavor of the types of assistance that we're looking at within each of these countries. And it is quite varied. In Fiji, for example, we're looking at connectivity within the main islands on the roads, but also the domestic shipping. So the localized ports, the jetties, the protection from storm surges or sea rises. So we're looking at smart port operations in many, so Nauru again, another port operation. PNG, a lot of highway, but also maritime infrastructure. And so a similar across all of the Pacific operations, looking at the connectivity between the road network on the islands, but the port facilities, and at the bottom there, the trade and transport facilitation of regional connectivity as well as domestic connectivity. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. So I just want to summarize that we do respond, and I hope you're seeing the sort of shift at the beginning in terms of a dominance of the road subsector to a much more balanced investment in the infrastructure. What we are seeing requests from our clients, both public and private, is support in how we manage transport systems. So a growth in asset management, a growth in support for institutional structures, particularly say where there are large government bodies, such as in the railway subsector. What are the institutions that are required to ensure more profitable rail operations and services? And looking at this through efficiency gains. And I think both in the rail subsector, the integration of maritime with connecting road networks or rail networks, but also particularly in urban areas where the efficiency and the need to integrate public transport systems, be they rail-based or road-based, together with non-motorized transport services to provide that full options for journey and also affordability. What the governments are really looking for, I think, as mentioned by Jeff just before me, was looking at ensuring that ADB still can provide value. The simplistic civil engineering, there has been across the region a huge number of qualified civil engineer graduates who are able to design, and an increasingly very competent growth in contracting companies across the region. So the more simplistic projects are not really being sought support from governments to ADB because they have the engineers to design, and in many places they have the contracting companies to deliver and implement those projects. So we're seeing an increase request for support in much more complicated areas, such as the railways, urban transport, and multimodal connectivity. We are pushing for a lot more data within the sector and use of new technologies. It's only when we start to monitor and measure the transport sector, we can understand where the changes in demand and travel patterns are happening, but also look at some of the impacts that the sector is having in respect to the Sustainable Development Goals and Paris Agreement. At the moment, the transport sector has relatively good information on the infrastructure, pretty poor information on the transport activity, the person kilometers traveled or the ton kilometers shipped. It isn't well known. And once we move into the sort of externalities on road safety, the emissions, the data is even more lacking. So we want to help build up a database so we can have better informed discussions with our clients, both in governments and the private sector, to address the key policy. And this would push us more into policy type support, results-based lending and policy-based lending in addition to the infrastructure. But we are seeing a shift towards that policy support as opposed to pure infrastructure. An increased attention in private sector, I haven't said much as I went through the regions, but we are looking at financial support in non-sovereign Again, similar areas. We recently had large support in the private sector support in the railway subsector in India and in the mass transit system in Bangkok, Thailand. So we are looking at a different range of support in private sector clients as well. And one area that I should finish on is on the emerging technologies. And I mentioned the decarbonization of the sector. We do see that the future of e-mobility at the moment is definitely within Asia. Around 97% of e-vehicles around the world are in Asia. These are primarily 2- and 3-wheelers. There is a lot of information out there on Teslas and the sort of family switch, but the reality is that the e-mobility shift is happening. It's happening in Asia, and we want to make sure that we support our client governments as well as the private sectors in terms of who is building the batteries, building the vehicles to meet that increased demand and shift to a decarbonization of the sector. And the final point on the broader use of financial services, this is the shift away from pure project loans to results-based lending and policy-based lending to meet the increased complexities of the type of assistance that our clients are looking for. I do apologize. I realize the last 2 slides are just a little bit repetitive. So if we can jump forward, I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, and I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Leder. I would like to conclude that from what we saw earlier is that transport is an important sector which is appears steady increase in the lending volume in the transport sector from ADB. And as part of Adb Strategy 2030 operational priorities, transport has a significant or essential role and by Adb divided into region or geographical area as road and railways in Central, West, and Asia, urban transport and mass transit, as well as railways in South Asia. And then there is multi-project as mass transit, road, urban transport, railway in Southeast Asia. And for the East Asia, there is policy support, connectivity, and urban transport. And lastly, in the Pacific, ADB support with the road, highway, and building of ports. I think it's enough. And moving on, we would like to move on to our second speaker, Mr. Eric Kansiu. I hope to spell the name correctly. Mr. Eric is a senior water resource specialist in the Environment, Natural Resource and Agriculture Division of the Southeast Asia Department of the ADB. And Mr. Kansiu is leading preparation and implementation of water resource and agriculture in Indonesia. Prior to his posting in Indonesia, he was administering other ADB water sector operation in Southeast Asia. Mr. Eric Kansiu is French national who has 20 years of water resource management and agricultural experience in the Asia and the Pacific. Okay, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Kansiu. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theodore. Selamat pagi bagi semua dan salam sehat. So my presentation will be more focused on the Indonesian program for water resources. My colleagues James presented an overview of the transport program across ADB. I'll definitely focus on Indonesia. Is it possible to get the slides on, please? Next slide, please. Yeah. So for Indonesia, definitely the investment we've been supporting in the water sector are fully aligned with the objective of the RPGMN. And as you know, the government of Indonesia has several major projects and priority investment in the sector. And that's where ADB is providing technical and financial support. We are increasing our focus on bringing new technologies in the sector, or it could be digital platforms. We've been working a lot with the Ministry of Public Works and Housing on improving our asset management through introduction of digital solutions. We are also looking at bringing partnership to support innovation in country, and we've been partnering with international knowledge center, but also we are also partnering with Indonesian universities on specific topics. In line with the government of Indonesia willingness to bring more financing, we are also exploring how to increase private sector participation in the water sector. And that's specifically for water supply, working with different stakeholders across the supply chain. We are continuing to engage with local communities, but also with women, especially on small contracts. And as my colleagues James mentioned, for the transport sector, we are also working at policy and looking at the regulatory frameworks to improve delivery in the sector, especially for operation and maintenance. Next slide, please. Our focus for investment have been in the flood resilience. We've been very active in the sector, and will continue to be active in infrastructure to increase flood protection in economic centers, and especially in North Java, which is a very important economic corridor for Indonesia. We are also continuing our investment in irrigation. We have large programs, and we'll continue supporting Ministry of Public Works and the farmers community to improve water efficiency and farming productivity. We are providing a lot of support in the infrastructure operation and maintenance, really to look at sustainability, and that's where we are looking at some innovation in terms of digital technology, but also bringing supporting the government in improving processes. A new sector where we engage is the water supply sector. It has been traditionally a sector that ADB is supporting, but here we are really integrating upstream and downstream chains, and really looking at securing the water sources and working with different parties downstream, like PDIMs, local municipalities or provincial governments to develop integrated regional water supply systems. Like in the Philippines, we have also a technical assistance loan, which is also helping the Ministry of Public Works to prepare a very robust pipeline of investment projects in the water sector, but also urban and transport sectors. And this project is ongoing and will lead to a large volume of investment. We are also partnering with agencies such as LAPAN in Indonesia, but also the European Space Agency to improve our planning capacity, and using satellite technology to inform our investment. Next slide, please. So in line with our focus that I mentioned before, we are actually preparing a large investment for Pantura. That's for improving flood protection along Pantura. So the project is planned for $250 million in 2023, and it will combine flood infrastructure, river walks, sediment trap, and so on, with some technology and planning innovation to provide the river basin organization with flood warning and forecasting information systems, but also provide opportunities to the communities to be involved in small flood works and localized solution. So it will be, again, an integrated investment looking at different parts of the river basin with civil works, equipment, and consulting services opportunities. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you very much. The next investment we are also in, which is also in preparation, is the ASEAN Irrigation Development Project in North Sumatra. Sorry, can you come back, please? Which is again an investment that is being prepared under the ongoing technical assistance loan. This investment will obviously help developing irrigation systems, so that will be infrastructure opportunities for contractors. That will be also introducing some technologies for helping farmers to adapt to the condition in the area, and that will be also consulting services opportunities. And this investment of $200 million with the Ministry of Public Works is planned for approval in 2023. This investment will also bring some partnership on innovation for improving operation maintenance. Next slide, please. So those are the investment and approach we are developing we have developed for Indonesia, and I'll be very happy to take any question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. I would like to summarize what Mr. Eric has already mentioned, is that ADB water approach in the water sector in Indonesia comes from one, it's like a flood resilience, which is flood management and coastal protection in North Java. And the second one is irrigation, which is the ASEAN irrigation development in the North Sumatra. And the lastly is water supply system, whether it is upstream and downstream. Okay, now we would like to move on to our third speaker from the ADB. I would like to welcome Ms. Jenny Chu. Ms. Jenny is a procurement specialist from the Procurement, Portfolio and Financial Management Department of the ADB. She is currently the procurement focal for ADB Sovereign Operations Project in Cambodia, as well as public management finance and regional cooperation divisions in People's Republic of China. She is a chartered professional engineer and an admitted barrister and solicitor of the High Court of New Zealand. Okay, moving on, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jenny Chu for your time, please, Miss Jenny.
Thank you, Selamat pagi. If you can just load the slide, please. In these sessions, I will aim to cover a brief overview of ADB operations procurement, our system, give you some key statistics, if you can move on to the next slide, on the suppliers in ADB across different portfolio, and also suppliers from Indonesia. Our recent procurement reform in 2017 and some of the key changes that took place recently, and how does it mean in terms of you putting together your contracting or bidding strategy, some pointers on how to find information on business opportunities under ADB projects from our website, and also a specific opportunity with COVID-19 response projects as well. Next slide. So as the speakers earlier on touch on, ADB operate in across the different region Asia Pacific with 68 members. And next slide. The main portfolio covers sovereign as well as non-sovereign operations. Next slide. And across different regions, this gives you a bit of a snapshot on the spread of different portfolio. In particular, you can look on the right-hand side, across transport, energy, water, agriculture, education, public sector management, and others on the trend between last year and this year. Next slide, please. And as Jeff mentioned, the sovereign portfolio in 2020 of a total commitments 102 billion. Next slide. And also the non-sovereign portfolio is also going pretty strong, increasingly over the years as well. Next slide. In this Adb Strategy 2030, there are a number of key operational priorities, and Adb is combining finance, knowledge, and partnership to sustain the effort to eradicate extreme poverty and expand the visions towards inclusive, resilient, prosperous, and sustainable region. And these kind of key operational priorities will underpin the kind of work, consultant, good and non-consultant services that Adb will be procuring. And as you're going through the different opportunity that's listed on the web page, you might pick up on these different themes. So having some understanding and awareness of the 7 operational priorities might help in your approach in being successful in your procurement with Adb. Next slide, please. I'm now just going to quickly touch on some stats on top good suppliers, top contract and consultant suppliers by member state, and it is across the whole of Adb sovereign operations portfolios over the last few years. And highlighted on the screen are where Indonesia is standing. So Indonesia is doing generally quite well. That is sort of make it within the top 5 of good supply over the last few years. Next slide. And also in 2019, Indonesia is ranked 4th in terms of the winning works contracts in Adb portfolio as well. Next slide. And last year, Indonesia also came 4th in providing consulting services in Adb works as well. Next slide. And if we're looking at the top 5 supplier in terms of procurement of goods by amount, over the last 3 years, these are the suppliers in terms of the number of contracts they have won, as well as the amount that they have received as well from those contracts. Next slide. And this is the top 5 for works. And in each year, Adb provides loan, grant, and technical assistance to fund projects and activities in its development member state. And you can see several $1 billion in contract to procure these good works and consulting services when spent. And most of the contracts are awarded on the basis of international competition. And also increasingly other form of open competitions, perhaps also through nationally advertised as well. And it's open to firm and individuals from Adb members in general as well. There are some other specific provisions in consultant services, which I'll touch on later on as well. Next slide. This is the top 5 consulting firms over the last few years. Again, you can see the amount is also quite substantive. Next slide. If we're looking at the statistics for Indonesia, for contractors and suppliers from Indonesia, a total of about 35,000 contracts, and that's worth about 26.2 billion have been awarded since 1966. So that's quite a large amount. And in particular, from 2016 to end of last year, these are the top firms from Indonesia involved in ADB portfolio works. And you can see the top one is from the transport sector. Next slide. And generally speaking, for consultant services, in 2019, a total of 756 million of consultant services was awarded. And in 2020, a total of 732 million was awarded in this procurement modality. And for consultants from Indonesia, about 4,400 contracts that's worth about 854 million have been awarded since 1966. And the statistics on the slide here are the top 5 consultants from Indonesia involved in the ADB consultant portfolio over the last few years. And that's a mixture of firm and also individual as well. Next slide. We recently launched our operational procurement statistic dashboard that is publicly available from ADB website, and you're welcome to have a look and explore for yourself the different statistics and information on operational procurement by regions, by countries, by the modality and also by sector as well, to get information that's relevant for your business planning. Next slide. So why would you want to pursue ADB funded contracts? As mentioned before, it's a gateway to new opportunity in many of the fast-growing economy across different sectors. And our operations are rapidly growing over different years. And this is underpinned by a very robust and internationally respected framework of fairness, transparency, and some of the principles that I'll touch on later on, and also very strong integrity oversight as well. So it's a trusted process that we want to make sure that all the parties involved, the consultant, the contractors, the suppliers, working in an environment that is supported to provide a good quality outcome for the members country that ADB provides support to. Next slide. And in terms of what sort of point in the ADB project lifecycle that business might have opportunity to be engaged, and if you're looking for what are the possible entry point in ADB projects, it's then useful to understand the ADB project cycle, starting from the planning stage on a country level, then cascade down to projects, and then individual contract. And as an organization, you might want to look at things based on sector or based on country. Also, if you're looking at just a more shorter time frame, then you can also look at what are the different projects coming up. If we're starting from a country level planning, there's the country partnership strategy and also regional cooperation strategy, where consultants will be required to provide support on gathering information, coordinating discussion, providing studies and insight to inform those strategy development. And then based on the country partnership strategy, pipeline investment plans developed, and then from there, the different sector projects is also developed. And in the concepting development stage of the projects, through technical assistant consultant will be recruited, and this information and opportunity can be found on the consulting management system on the website, which I will also touch on later on. And that will form a significant amount of our consultant service recruitment. And a consultant will support the preparation of these projects up to including the approval stage. And after the approval of the project in the form of loan or grant has been established, then the borrower will receive the loan and grant from ADB to then further procure to implement the projects, and then they become the client in that sense. And the procurement, the borrower might use the ADB loan and grant will include consulting services, supply of goods, IT services, physical works, and other non-consulting services as well. And that that lasts through the entire project life cycle. And when a project is finished, then we will require some consultant support again to complete evaluation of the project to close out, which then inform the next round of planning. So as you can see, there's many opportunities that a firm or individuals can be engaged in this different part of the ADB project's life cycle. And I will go on to maybe where you can find out those information later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So as I touch on the different kind of opportunities for different firm individuals can be through goods, works, consultant service, and non-consultant services. And each of these different categories has its own procurement procedures and relevant document. This information is also available on our website, which I will point you to later in the presentation as well. Next slide, please. As I've mentioned, one of the key changes recently the last few years is the procurement reform in ADB, and this reform has brought about a new ADB procurement policy, and is supported by the procurement regulations for ADB borrowers. And these policy and regulations is applicable for ADB projects that has a concept paper approved on or after 1st of July 2017. For projects with concept papers approved before then, and that's still ongoing, the orange and green book, which some of you might be familiar with, is still applicable for that. So currently we're still running both. So depending on the approval date of the projects, the different set of framework will be applicable. And next slide. And the key drivers is update of the procurement policy to introduce stronger focus on quality and value for money, to make sure that the procurement is fit for purpose rather than one size fit all, so that it's really there to be more flexible to help achieve the desired project outcome of the work that is being planned and delivered. And there's other supporting document other than policy and staff and regulation as well. There's also a corresponding staff instruction as well as bidding document and also 24 guidance note to help the implementations of this new procurement framework. Next slide, please. And just a quick recap in terms of the roles and responsibilities in procurement. The key players, of course, are the borrowers, ADB, and bidders and firms as well. The contract in the implementation stage in the life cycle that I've highlighted before is the contracting party is between the borrowers or executing agency, and they are responsible for procuring most of the good works and services as well as the suppliers of those good works and services. So the contract is between them. So the borrower is responsible to do the procurement at that stage. ADB also will do procurement to support its borrower through technical assistance and staff consulting, and that's mostly in the earlier planning phase and the evaluation phase of the project lifecycle. And throughout all of these different stage of the project life cycle, ADB also has a fiduciary due diligence role to review all the procurement activities of the borrowers to ensure that it's compliance with our policy and regulation, and to provide any support and training that might be required. Our preferred option is open competitive biddings, which can be I suppose further divided into nationally advertised and internationally advertised method. And that our procurement would generally consist of evaluation on both technical and financial component. So those are sort of like some key building blocks of our procurement process. Next slide, please. I've touched on before that there are different procurement document, and that in a new procurement framework, there's been some update on the suite of document that we have got available. Some of the new ones include IT products and services, design, build, operate, as well as non-consulting services. And these are just to reflect the current status of the market and the trend of what is really required on the ground. Next slide, please. And again, we have updated also on the suite of procurement method as well to provide more tools to make sure that the procurement process can be effective and also fit for purpose. And some of the examples are framework agreement for consulting, which is sort of like forming a panel, and then you can issue call-off order to contract panelized members for multiple repeatable similar scope of services. And there's also procurement of high-level technology and also procurement procedures in fragile, complex, affected emergency situation as well. Next slide, please. In terms of some of the pointers in preparing for bids, we have summarized them here as follows. So some of the key things to watch out for is to make sure that the bids are signed by a person who is an authorized signatory, and that there's the bid security or bid security declarations that is provided in the bid with the sufficient amount of the security and a correct validation period. So all in all is making sure that all of the supporting document is listed in the bid data sheet in the instruction to bidders is all included. Those are the things that is absolutely essential to ensure the bid is completed. And then also providing any applicable test report or certificate of completion required in the bid evaluation or qualifications criteria as well, so that the bid is technically substantially responsive. And these are the things that is sometimes quite I suppose unfortunate that a firm might miss out on the basis of these completeness point. So if you can sort of put some focus on making sure that the bid is submission is completed, then I think a lot of these unfortunate mistakes can be avoided. And then also if in doubt of any questions around conflict of interest, just ask a question within the deadlines available and disclose it so that appropriate and timely response can be provided. And also, please ensure that the technical proposal, technical bid, and the financial submissions is separated, because if they are mixed up, then the bid will be rejected as well. So, so these are some of the common pointers that we have seen in terms of bid preparation for procurements of goods and works. Next slide, please. And I've also previously talked about the importance of a strong integrity regime in underpinning our procurement process. And that is governed by the ADB integrity principles and associated guideline, and also the anti-corruption policy and guideline as well. If there is any concern or issues associated with these matters, there is a specific contact email that you can reach out to. And I think that's on a later slide that you can access. Next slide, please. So the next part of the presentation, I'll just quickly focus on some of the key pointers relating to consultant services. Next slide. The type of consultant recruitment is largely split into consulting firms and individual consultant, and there's also staff consultant supporting ADB team as well. The consultant firms and individual consultant is funded by technical assistance, loan and grant, with technical assistance generally administered by ADB, and also loan and grant generally administered by the borrowers in terms of who is responsible for the recruitment of the consultant. And the recruitment may be national or international. I have mentioned earlier on that the generally speaking procurement is open to all of ADB members countries. And that is also the case for consulting services. And in addition, in terms of firm recruitment, with the new procurement framework, one of the flexibility has been that as long as firm is a national that is legally incorporated in any of the ADB member countries, the team members of the firm proposed can be from any country. So that is something that is quite new, but that is only for firm recruitment. In terms of international, in terms of individual consultant recruitment, the national should still be a member of the ADB members country. Next slide, please. And the general process of a firm recruitment is the preparations by the client, be it ADB or the borrowers. Preparations of the scope of work, what is required in terms of deliverable, milestone, budget in form of terms of reference, and then that get advertised on CMS or the local advertising channel. Then it gets shortlisted, and the firm will be requested to submit a proposal responding to RFP or SRFP. Then there's evaluation of the proposals received, and then the first ranked firm will be invited to negotiate. And the negotiation content varies depending on the selection method. And should this negotiation be successful, then it leads to contract award and implementation of the contract. Next slide. So I mentioned before that there's different procurement method to recruit the firms, and it's sort of largely on a spectrum of leaning towards purely cost-based, or really focusing on quality, or mix of both. So the consultant recruitment will normally require to submit technical evidence, both cost and also quality, which is QCBS, which is also our default recommended method. The consultant firm in the RFP stage will be required to submit a technical proposal and also a financial proposal, and both of that will be evaluated separately, and then a combined weighted score will be taken into account to derive the overall first rank firm. There are also these other method in between, depending on what the specific situation and the circumstances is. And for launching grant, the procurement method should be all listed in the procurement plan of the launching grant, which you can also access from project and tender page in ADB website. And again, I'll show you where to find that later on. Next slide, please. In terms of some of the key pointers to approach ADB consulting opportunity, our recommendation would be to identify a suitable starting point, and look to build your expertise and portfolio in the area. Consider which of the individual or firm consulting opportunities best to suit yourself. And if you have a targeted market or clientele, know the expectation, the strategy, the priorities well. And as mentioned by previous speakers, also understanding the local context and background in the country or in the sector is very important. And considering partner up with other firm, individual institutions to leverage experience and add value to your proposal. And also understanding what are the specific commercial element to doing business in any of the region you're interested in, and associated costs. And ask questions if you've got any to make sure that you can prepare your strategy of submitting a proposal well. So those are some of the key pointers. A lot of the information in terms of process on how to submit the proposal expression of interest itself. There's tutorial on these different steps available on the ADB Consultant Management System website as well. And you can go through them and ask questions, and there is a help desk available to answer those questions if you've got any. Next slide, please. Another important features of the consultant recruitment process is the availability to request a debrief for any of the unsuccessful bidders who requested to submit a proposal, as in those who have been shortlisted. And if they've also submitted a proposal, and then after that, if they're not successful, they can request a debrief from the procuring entity, including ADB and the borrowers. And this is something that we will encourage you to avail. It's a good opportunity to get some feedback on how you might consider to restructure your approach or make change accordingly. And another things that is available is the procurement complaint mechanism. We take the handling of procurement complaint seriously, and any of the consultant and bidders or party of interest may file complaint directly with ADB or may copy ADB on correspondence with the borrower as well. And if you want to file a complaint to ADB, there is the online form accessible from the contact page of ADB website. And that complaint will be tracked on a centralized level and a response will be provided to you by the relevant assigned person that's handling the complaint as well. If there is any issues with integrity, I've mentioned before, there's a specific a contact email and also a channel to report issues on that as well. And that's also on the slide. Next slide, please. So now the final part of my presentation will be focusing on how best to find information on a website to help you with your business planning, be it procurement of good works or consultant services. And there's largely maybe 3 different areas, starting with our business center, and then our operations procurement page, and then projects and tender page. And they're all sort of cross-linked, and you're able to access them from under Work With Us in the homepage of ADB as well. And I mean, if you also just generally Google these key terms with ADB, it should lead you to this specific page as well. Next slide, please. So the first one is ADB Business Centers. It contains a list of FAQ and information for different stakeholders, consultants, borrowers, firms, and it's sort of a good quick reference on the how-to on different things. It also has linked to our policy, regulations, procedures, and some of the procurement document and form as well. Next slide. And in another page, and it can also be accessible from the Business Center page, is the Operations Procurement page. It's a one page containing the reference link to our projects and tender information, which provide you access to the procurement plan of projects, and then also information on the different policy, different regulations, standard bidding document, request for proposals document, our guidance note, and also some online tutorials on some of the features of the new procurement framework, and also relevant procurement new release and update as well. Next slide, please. And the third part that I mentioned that might be relevant is, and you can access that through the link in the Operations Procurement page, is ADB's project and tender page. And in there, you can see there's different tabs. There's a tabs on projects, document, and tender. And under the projects one, you can pretty much access all the publicly available information on a specific project, which will give you an idea of how the project is going to be administered and the different contracts that the projects will is expected to award as well, and that is in the form of the procurement plan, and you can access the project's procurement plan from going into the project and look at the relevant document. If you don't have a specific project in mind and you're interested in the currently available tender, you can also go into the tender tab of this page. It will give you and access to filtering out the opening of different tender in different countries, in different sectors, and different type as well. And you can see the status of also different tender from this sort of checklist. the left-hand side arrow here, I'm not sure if you can see them clearly, is the different filters that you can apply to undertake your search. Next slide, please. And finally, I've mentioned about ADB's consultant management system quite a few times, and this is the portal where you can register yourself as a consultant or prospective consultant for ADB and our borrowers, and have access to consultant opportunity that's listed in here. Next slide, please. And the consultant opportunity is listed in the form of CSRN, and then you can click into any specific CSRN listing of interest to understand what's the requirement, and in terms of the scope, the expertise, and what information or what sort of consultant we're looking for. Next slide, please. If you're interested in receiving alert from the system, you can also sign up in these two different portals as well, so to keep yourself updated. Next slide. And finally, we also have created an outreach page to help our focus on COVID-19 pandemic response. And that is also available from a cross-reference link in the operations procurement page. Next slide. And the page there, it has linked to a list of key expertise that might be highly sought after at the time, and also specific COVID-19 filter functions being introduced to the CMS system, and then you can filter COVID-19 specific consultant recruitment opportunity by selecting the filter. So that will take you to I guess, yeah, opportunity that has that focus. And also on that page are some of the key information on ADB's effort to support procurement of COVID-19 response-related materials, such as PPE and other medical equipment, and some other related procurement story as well, if you're interested. Next slide. So here's a bit of a summary on our linking group. If you are interested, you're welcome to join our community of consultant and supplier network to receive further feed on social medias. And also I'll encourage you to follow the ADB Business Center page as well. If you've got any questions, we're available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenny Chu. There's a lot of information. Wow. And I think for the last 10 slides, I think this is what our participants were looking for. And okay, to summarize what Ms. Jenny Chu already mentioned, one in particular is that Indonesia companies' involvement is increasing in multiple ADB's projects. Like for example, in 2020, Indonesia is the top 5 supplier for goods. In 2019, top 5 for works, and 2020, top 5 for consulting services. And if we take a look at the ADB project cycle, I think the private sector engagement is needed in almost all of the project cycle. So this is an opportunity for our participants to be engaged in the ADB project cycle. And also there is FAQ sections, which is on www.adb.org/business, where you can learn about to be a contractor or supplier for ADB. And you can also check directly to the operational procurement for goods and work, and for consultant, you can register in the cms.adb.org. Okay, that's the last speaker from ADB, Ms. Jenny Chu, and which conclude all the insight of ADB projects for today. And we would like to also learn from our colleagues, which already won one of the award from the ADB project, PT PP Persero. And I would like to welcome Mr. Bahtiar Effendi. Mr. Effendi is the General Manager of Operations for PT Pembangunan Perumahan or PP. He is in charge in leading project managers and office production staff, overseeing and responsible for multiple projects simultaneously, as well as licensing with clients for quality and designs. One of his best achievement is Civil Engineering Project Awards for an outstanding and remarkable contribution to the advancement of civil engineering and development in Asia. I would like to welcome Mr. Bahtiar Effendi. The floor is yours, Mr. Effendi. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Theodore Starto. Good morning, everyone. So, first, I want to make introduction for myself. My name is Bahtiar Effendi. I'm from PTPP Persero Tbk. It's one of the state-owned company in construction industry in Indonesia. And we are also right now doing the ADB projects. So we have 3 ADB projects. So this morning I will share some experience for the bidding ADB projects. Sebelumnya saya yang terhormat Ibu Deputi Kepala LKPP Ibu Sarah Sadika, kemudian kepada yang terhormat Ibu Direktur IUKI LKPP, juga Ibu Dwi Wahyuni Kartaningsih. And also I want to extend the warmest greetings to all the ADB high management and speakers that attend to this event this morning. So I'm glad to see my company on your list this morning. Thank you very much. Baik, untuk selanjutnya saya mohon izin untuk men-share presentasi ya. Maaf, sudah kelihatan? Ya, terima kasih.
Oke.
Selanjutnya saya akan presentasikan ini dalam bahasa Indonesia, mungkin karena partisipan banyak yang dari Indonesia. Baik, pagi ini saya akan coba memaparkan, memberikan experience singkat mengenai bagaimana memenangkan atau membidding proyek-proyek yang didanai oleh ADB, ASEAN Development Bank. Jadi saat ini PTPP Persero Tbk terdapat ada 3 proyek yang sudah berjalan. Mulai tahun lalu kita ada wastewater treatment plant di Pekanbaru, kemudian di Makassar. Tahun ini kita mendapatkan Ciujung Priority Civil Works Package 3. Kebetulan kita sedang membidding juga LRT yang ada di Philippines dan 1 proyek sumber daya air yang ada di Sumbawa. Ini adalah nilai kontraknya, ya, memang tidak terlalu besar. Kemudian secara kontrak ADB ini selalu menggunakan FIDIC. WWTP ini menggunakan Yellow Book, ya, karena design and build, sedangkan untuk Ciujung Priority Civil Work menggunakan Pink Book atau FIDIC MDB Harmonized. Kemudian untuk syarat-syarat yang diperlukan, yang perlu kita perhatikan pada saat kita membidding proyek, terutama proyek ADB, adalah administration requirement atau syarat-syarat administrasi. Jadi di sini saya pisah menjadi 2 persyaratan itu. Secara global adalah administration dan technical. Jadi di administration ini kita perlu fokus kepada beberapa hal, yaitu satu, instruction to bidder, yang kedua bid data sheet, kemudian kita perlu menyampaikan experience, ya, experience yang diperlukan untuk yang diminta dan sesuai dengan dokumen yang diperlukan. Selain itu, di proyek ADB ini memerlukan financial requirement yang cukup ketat, yaitu nanti kita akan sampaikan di sana, di mana diminta history financial selama 5 tahun ke belakang, di mana biasanya kalau proyek pemerintah hanya 1 tahun ke belakang. Nah, ini semua sudah termasuk di dokumen pengadaan di section 1, yaitu bidding procedure. Nah, ini adalah isinya yang perlu diperhatikan. Biasanya ada 5. Ini saya ambil dari pengadaan WWTP yang ada di Pekanbaru. Selanjutnya adalah technical requirement. Di sini sebenarnya technical requirement itu semuanya ada di part 2, ya, employers requirement. Jadi kita perlu membaca dengan sangat detail apa isi employer requirement di sini, karena di sanalah terhadap skop pekerjaan, kemudian spesifikasi, di sana ada drawing. Jadi ini cukup penting dalam penyusunan baik technical proposal maupun nantinya harga bidding atau harga penawaran kita. Nah, di sini selain itu ada desain proposal. Biasanya kalau itu ada desain and build, jadi kita perlu menyampaikan beberapa konsep desain di awal. Kemudian personil. Jadi personil ini merupakan salah satu technical requirement yang cukup penting, di mana ada beberapa pengalaman dari kompetitor maupun kita sendiri gagal karena tidak menyajikan kebutuhan atau personil di bawah dari kebutuhan yang sudah ditetapkan. Kemudian yang kedua, peralatan. Jadi ini sebuah sampel juga saya sampaikan, ini adalah peralatan yang dibutuhkan. Kita harus menyampaikan bukti baik pemilikan alat maupun bukti bahwa kita akan melakukan kerjasama dengan menyewa atau mensubkontraktorkan beberapa pekerjaan yang mempunyai alat seperti list yang diminta. Kemudian yang perlu diperhatikan lagi adalah masalah spesifikasi. Jadi spesifikasi, karena ini dari ADB, kebanyakan mengadopsi spesifikasi dari luar negeri. Jadi kita harus cukup berhati-hati mencek apakah dengan spesifikasi itu kita bisa mendapatkan material itu atau peralatan itu ada di Indonesia. Apabila tidak bisa, kita harus menyampaikan itu di depan pada waktu klarifikasi, ya. Kemudian meminta konversi kepada standar yang ada di Indonesia. Kemudian teknikal ini seperti yang tadi saya katakan, ini cukup penting bagi harga kita, price yang akan kita submitkan. Skop pekerjaan ini mempengaruhi seberapa kita akan mengestimasi nilai pekerjaan yang akan kita submit. Kemudian selanjutnya timeline tender. Jadi tender ini karena kontrak semuanya menggunakan FIDIC, jadi timeline kita otomatis mengacu kepada FIDIC kontrak. Nah, di sini ada detail-detail yang memang itu diatur oleh employer, yang biasanya employer ini dibawahi oleh Kementerian PU. Ya. Jadi di sini ini ada sampel bahwa tender period itu didetailkan lagi sesuai dengan standar PU yang di sana ada pengumuman pasca kualifikasi, ada penjelasan, kemudian ada upload karena mereka menggunakan e-proc, kemudian ada evaluasi sampai dengan penandatangan kontrak. Nah, ini semua bisa didapatkan dari website PU, dari e-proc-nya bisa jelas sekali ada di sana. Kemudian selanjutnya masuk kepada tahap submission. Tadi ada beberapa hal yang perlu kita perhatikan untuk di submission ini. Pertama adalah penggunaan forms. Jadi banyak sekali kesalahan-kesalahan, kegagalan ketika tender ini karena tidak menggunakan forms yang ada. Jika dilihat daftar yang ada di kanan itu sudah disediakan di dokumen tender ya. Di sana ada banyak sekali forms yang di bawah itu mulai dengan apabila kita joint venture, ada pending litigation dan application, ada financial, ada experience ya, kontrak similar size and nature. Nah, ini semua harus kita penuhi dan disubmit berdasarkan form. Jangan memakai form kita sendiri karena sudah ditetapkan di dalam dokumen. Kemudian yang kedua, apabila submission ini kita harus menggunakan foreign exchange rate, kita harus mengkonversi. Biasanya di dokumen kontrak, dokumen pengadaan akan diinfokan berapa exchange rate yang nanti akan digunakan untuk mengkonversi nilai submission. Jadi seperti yang tadi di WWTP nilai kontraknya ada yang 2 mata uang, ada yang 3 mata uang. Untuk menseleksi harga yang terendah, mereka akan mengkonversi dengan nilai exchange rate tertentu untuk mata uang asing. Nah, ini cukup penting, jadi jangan sampai kita salah menentukan exchange rate sehingga nilai penawaran seolah-olah lebih tinggi. Kemudian yang ketiga, apabila di sini ada import material ya, terutama beberapa pekerjaan yang spesifik, itu banyak sekali material-material yang harus kita adakan dari luar negeri, itu harus kita cek masalah import tax-nya, kemudian ada beberapa regulasi-regulasi atau hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan import, dan itu menyangkut masalah cost atau biaya, dan itu harus kita prediksi dan masuk dalam nilai penawaran yang akan kita ajukan. Selanjutnya adalah tahap pengumuman pemenang atau award. Jadi award ini ada beberapa metode dalam menentukan pemenang. Yang pertama yang biasa dari ADB itu digunakan adalah lowest price dengan mengacu dokumen technical yang lengkap juga. Jadi dari 3 yang sudah kita laksanakan semuanya dievaluasi berdasarkan lowest price. Tapi ada beberapa metode yang lain seperti combination dengan technical score atau biasa disebut dengan merit point, atau bisa menggunakan passing grade. Tapi sampai saat ini kebanyakan dari ADB menggunakan lowest price. Dan ketika kita menang, maka employer atau dalam hal ini Kementerian PU akan melakukan pengumuman ya secara terbuka dari semua peserta, seperti yang form yang ada di kanan ini. Kita contohkan bahwa kita mendapatkan posisi pertama dalam evaluasi di WWTP yang ada di Makassar. Kemudian lanjut ke masalah kontrak. Jadi semua proyek yang ada di ADB menggunakan kontrak FIDIC, baik Yellow Book atau Pink Book atau MDB Harmonized. Tergantung skop pekerjaan kita, apakah termasuk desain atau hanya construction saja. Nah, ini sudah tercakup dalam part 3, jadi di dokumen pengadaan biasanya sudah ada ya, disediakan di sana ada general condition of contract, ada special condition, dan ada contract form, sudah cukup lengkap. Jadi, tetapi di sini kita ada potensial problem. Nah, ini memang kebetulan di sini ada LKPP ya, bahwa ada beberapa hal yang biasanya akan menjadi potensial problem antara penerapan kontrafidik dan pelaksanaan perpres. Jadi kalau employer kita meskipun ini loan biasanya di bawah PUPR mereka masih mengacu kepada perpres, di mana ada beberapa hal yang ada perlakuan yang berbeda antara FIDIK dan perpres ini, di mana satunya adalah variation ketika kita akan ada pekerjaan tambah, kemudian ada claims, itu memang agak sulit ketika kita menerapkan FIDIK, tetapi pada akhirnya kita dihadapkan oleh perpres. Kemudian value engineering. Ketika kita melakukan value engineering, di FIDIK mengatakan dia akan 50% itu kepada kontraktor, 50% kepada employer. Nah, ini memang ada kesulitan kita ketika kita harus menerapkan ini kepada proyek pemerintah. Yang ketiga adalah payment. Ya. Jadi mungkin kalau loan memang sudah disediakan dananya, tetapi ada hambatan di sini bahwa proyek pemerintah selalu melakukan sistem DIPA setiap tahunnya. Nah, ketika pencapaian DIPA ini ada deviasi terhadap penetapan awal, itu juga seringkali menjadi potensial masalah ketika proyek kita bisa melaju cukup cepat, tetapi dalam aktualnya finansialnya DIPA-nya masih belum disiapkan, atau sebaliknya ketika ada masalah di proyek tapi DIPA-nya sudah disiapkan, akan ada deviasi penyerapan anggaran di DIPA. Kemudian yang terakhir adalah ketika ada dispute masalah pembayaran, di mana mungkin ada beberapa kejadian bahwa berhubungan tadi dengan DIPA ya, ada pengurusan, kemudian ketika tagihan kita itu ada keterlambatan, di mana di FIDIK ini maksimum pembayaran adalah 56 hari, tetapi dan akan ada penalti apabila ada keterlambatan pembayaran. Nah, di mana penalti ini akan susah juga diterapkan ketika kita dihadapkan oleh pemerintah yang itu berdasarkan perpres. Baik, saya lanjutkan. Ini adalah beberapa strategi ya, terutama yang paling penting. Jadi yang paling penting menurut kita adalah joint venture, di mana dari tiga proyek kita yang sudah berjalan semuanya kita joint venture, mengingat kita membutuhkan partner dalam hal specific works. Di WWTP misalnya kita juga perlu menggandeng beberapa spesialis yang mereka itu sudah mempunyai pengalaman mengerjakan water treatment plant untuk industrial, sehingga mereka mempunyai juga pengalaman, kemudian keahlian, sumber daya. Nah, ini yang membuat kita juga kompetitif ketika melakukan bidding di proyek-proyek yang spesifik yang biasanya ada di Adb ini. Jadi di sini saya list beberapa kelebihannya. Jadi yang pertama ada specific work. Ketika kita butuh beberapa pekerjaan yang spesifik, kita menggandeng teman-teman atau rekanan yang biasa mengerjakan itu. Kemudian apabila terdapat desain scope, kita design and build, kita juga bisa menggunakan jasa konsultan untuk kita joint venture. Kemudian kita bisa combine experience, jadi perusahaan besar seperti PP dan beberapa BUMN karya yang lain pasti akan mudah menyajikan historical finance dengan baik dan mempunyai tim tender yang cukup bagus, tetapi kita juga butuh experience yang lain yang cukup spesifik yang kemungkinan kami belum mempunyai pengalaman itu. Juga ada kalanya kita combine resource, di mana ada beberapa resource terutama personil ketika kita melakukan bidding, kita perlu personil yang mempunyai pengalaman-pengalaman khusus ya. Tadi mungkin dalam hal desain atau pekerjaan-pekerjaan yang cukup spesifik. Ini ada beberapa contoh yang kita melakukan joint venture di sebelah kanan. PP di Pekanbaru dengan PJL, dengan Memiontek, juga salah satunya kita juga berjoint venture dengan kontraktor dari Australia, McConnell Dowell untuk di WWTP. Nah, ini adalah perbandingan simpel saja untuk bagaimana karakteristik proyek ADB dengan pemerintah dalam hal persyaratan pada waktu tender ini. Ini saya highlight saja bahwa di sini ada bid security dan declaration. Jadi biasanya kita ada bid security saja di proyek-proyek PU. Tadi mungkin Miss Jenny juga info ya, ada beberapa pengalaman field-nya submission itu juga karena ada declaration, ini cukup benar sekali. Kemudian untuk financial performance, historicalnya ada 5 tahun ke belakang, di mana kita biasanya hanya diminta 1 tahun. Ini cukup sulit ya, memang kalau perusahaan besar seperti PP mungkin cukup mudah. Jadi tapi untuk perusahaan yang menengah ke bawah akan cukup sulit. Kemudian ada average annual turnover, biasanya nilai annual turnover ini disesuaikan dengan nilai proyeknya. Semakin besar nilai proyek akan diminta average turnover yang cukup tinggi. Kemudian ada letter of intent dan pending litigation and arbitration. Nah, ini dua ini sudah disiapkan formnya ya, dari ADB biasanya sudah disiapkan formnya, tinggal nanti silakan diisi, dan litigation dan arbitration bisa menunjukkan bukti bahwa berapa proyek kita yang masih di pengadilan atau di arbitrase. Selanjutnya adalah bagaimana kita membuat sebuah tim tender yang baik sehingga kita bisa memenangkan tender itu. Jadi saya ingin juga berbagi di sini bahwa sebuah submission tender itu sebuah pekerjaan yang cukup complicated, cukup besar ya, sehingga harus didukung dengan tim yang sangat kuat dan teknologi fasilitas perusahaan yang mendukung. Di mana salah satunya adalah kita harus mempunyai satu departemen khusus untuk technical dan tender. Kemudian yang kedua, menempatkan bagian-bagian personil atau engineering ya untuk mensupport beberapa tugas yang akan dilakukan pada saat bidding. Setiap orang harus mempunyai tugas dan tanggung jawab sendiri-sendiri, sehingga setiap hal itu sudah ditangani oleh person in charge-nya masing-masing. Kemudian kita harus membuat sebuah program di mana perencanaan dari mulai pengumuman adanya proyek sampai dengan bidding, kita harus membuat sebuah program yang baik, kapan tugas-tugas itu akan selesai dan siapa yang akan mengerjakan. Nah, salah satu kelebihan PP di sini adalah kita juga mempunyai knowledge center, di mana di dalam knowledge center ini kami bisa melihat beberapa pengalaman terakhir. Jadi pengalaman-pengalaman kita ketika bidding proyek yang sejenis, dalam hal ini proyek ADB, masa lalu kita juga cukup banyak proyek yang kita bidding dan menangkan, baik menang maupun kalah, kita bisa melihat itu di knowledge center, di mana di sana semuanya ada, baik masalah teknikal maupun masalah finance dan administrasi. Ya, jadi kita bisa download, bisa mendapatkan lesson learn dari beberapa pengalaman kita yang terakhir. Mungkin itu yang bisa saya sharing pada kesempatan ini. Memang disadari tidak banyak yang bisa di-sharing dalam hanya 10 menit, tetapi saya highlight beberapa hal-hal penting yang perlu kita perhatikan ketika kita membidding proyek, terutama proyek-proyek yang berkaitan dengan ADB. Mungkin itu, terima kasih. Mohon maaf apabila ada kesalahan kata. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ya, terima kasih Pak Bakhtiar Effendi. Thank you, Mr. Effendi, for your presentation. I think it will be very helpful to our colleagues from Indonesia when they want to be participating in ADB's project. So the committee already warned me about the time. We supposed to be finished around 11:30, but I think we still have a moment around 15 minutes for question and answer that already been prepared by our team. Okay, probably we go directly to that. The first question is from BPP Gapensi, Mr. Adesham. It is for two speakers, Mr. Jeff and Miss Jenny. For Mr. Jeff, when will this year's business opportunity fair be held? Is it delivered online due to the pandemic, or as will be held in Manila? And what is the mechanism or detail of the event? Can it be disseminated openly to the associations such as Gapensi, that is Mr. Adesham associations? And the second question to Miss Jenny. Thank you for your presentation. It is very good, but we need more technical explanation. Maybe we need detailed material such as short class or course or etc. Is it any special program for the newcomer to learn more clearly? I think first question I would like to address to Mr. Jeff. Is Mr. Jeff still available, Mr. Taylor? Or probably one of the ADB team member would like to answer the question about the business opportunity fair be held. Okay, is there anyone, please?
Hi. Hello.
Hello. Oh, Miss
Yes,
Apple, please.
yeah. Good afternoon or good morning to Indonesia. Yeah. There will be no business opportunities to be held here in Manila this year, but so far there's no plan yet. But we are doing some seminars which everyone can participate. There will be one coming this September. It will be on climate change and procurement. So just watch out for it. We'll advertise it in our ADB website and in the ADB Business Center LinkedIn. So we would invite everyone to follow the ADB Business Center LinkedIn for updates on our upcoming events. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Apple. So I would like to remind everyone that please stay tuned on ADB website for more information about the seminar. And then the second question to Miss Jenny, please. Do you have any more technical explanation or any special like course or classes? Please, Miss Jenny.
Hi, I think if there is any specific questions on any of the procurement aspect of our operations that I've covered, you were welcome to reach out to our procurement focal, Keiko, for Indonesia, and I'm sure appropriate training can be organized. And recently there has been some that's been arranged as well. So I think we're happy always to accommodate specific requests. Of course, given the time constraint today, I apologize that the information was quite condensed. But yeah, happy to provide further explanation as required. But we need to receive the specific question first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jenny, for the answer. Okay, moving on to the question number 2 from Ibu Muhira Nurhani. How to get information about the opportunity to join ADB project outside Indonesia, including as a vendor for furniture. So Ibu Nurhani is actually a vendor for furniture. Probably Miss Jenny, would you like to answer also this second question?
Sure. So I pointed out in the later part of my slide that there is the project and tender page on ADB website. And on that page, you can have access to any of the tenders that is open and available that's going on in Indonesia as well as outside of Indonesia. So if you are interested in any specific project or specific nature, I suggest you keep an eye out on the project's procurement plan. Very often, some projects will have purchasing of furniture or office equipment or other good supply. If you can have a look at the procurement plan, which will indicate when the advertisement period will be, and if you go to the tender page or the procurement advertising channel of the borrower around that time, then you should be able to get more information on the procurement of that specific package. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jenny. So for Miss Nurhani, you should also be stay tuned on the project procurement plan that already available in the ADB website. Okay, move for the next questions. PT Arup Indonesia, Miss Trudy. A question for Miss James and Miss Jenny again. For Mr. James, could you please share the investment ADB is planning for transport sector in Indonesia? Is there any planned investment that will start to be implemented this year or next year? Okay, please, Mr. Leder.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The transport sector work in Indonesia is smaller than in other countries, but there are some projects prepared, and very quickly these are available on the website. But just to give you a flavor, there is a technical assistance being proposed with the Ministry of Transportation for this year, which is looking at project preparation and implementation. So very much on the capacity development side with the ministry in terms of support for that. And I noticed that what may come out of there in terms of physical infrastructure lending in 2022, there is the National Road Development Project in Kalimantan. And I noticed there was another question on railway in a proposed loan in 2023, looking at the railway sector development project. So that may address also the railway question coming up. But there is a technical assistance on project preparation and a due diligence in terms of preparing the Kalimantan Road project, which is proposed for 2022. And in 2023, there's a railway development project. So not many in the transport sector for Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leder, for the answer. And then for Miss Jenny, could you please advise on how to request debriefing of bids? Would we get feedback from both EA, executing agency, and ADB if we request through one channel? Okay.
Sure. So firstly, I would just start off with the ADB administered procurement. So it's mainly for consultant services. And if you want to request for debrief, then you can get in touch with the contacts in ADB who issue you the request for proposal. And then they should be able to arrange for a debrief after contract award accordingly. In terms of our administered procurement, the contact for the borrowers in terms of procurement should be included in the bidding document and the specific request for proposals. For the borrower administered procurement, then the firm or the bidder should be in touch with the borrower for a request of debriefing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jenny. Now we go to the 4 questions from Gapek Sindo, Bapak Suparjono. The question is for ADB teams, based on what considerations that ADB prioritize its loan assistance for roadworks in the northern coast of Java or north coast of Java? Why not prioritize work routes in the remote area, such as in the central or eastern part of Indonesia? And the second one, what are the requirements to participate the tender project in Indonesia and outside Indonesia? Are the technical and regulation the same? Well, basically, the first question is probably for Mr. Leder again, and the second one is for Mr. Effendi. Probably could help us explain. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good question, an interesting question. We have discussions with governments in terms of development priorities and how the various sectors would feed through to that. But above all else, we are demand driven. We respond to government requests for assistance. Now, those assistance or the requests can be very large, and we have a certain financing envelope or technical assistant package that we can provide. So we respond to the client's needs. And in this case, it's the government that basically selects those. But we would also have discussions with the government in terms of the sector assessments and the setting up of the business plans and prioritizing which sectors should be supported or the government would seek support for, and within those sectors what would be the priorities. It could be railways, it could be rural access, it could be a whole host. The final point is that the demands for infrastructure and operational improvements are incredibly large. The development community, be they bilaterals or multilateral, only provides a small part of that. The vast majority comes from government with support from others and the private sector. Also, that the investments are in almost all of the Asia and the Pacific region are below what is required in terms of new construction and upkeep and maintenance of existing infrastructure as well. So the demands far outweigh the supply that's able to be provided. We do need to look at a fundamental shift in infrastructure investments and operations across the entire region, not just Indonesia, but we do respond to the client's needs and we have discussions with them and we look at prioritization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leder. The second one, I think Mr. Effendi could help us to answer the questions about are the technical regulation are the same with Indonesian regulation, I think. Thank you. Mr. Effendi, boleh bahasa, Pak?
Boleh, ya. Terima kasih Pak Sutanto. Jadi untuk pelelangan yang baik di Indonesia maupun di luar Indonesia itu di dokumen ADB sudah disiapkan. Baik yang di Indonesia pun itu bisa diikuti oleh kontraktor yang dari luar negeri. Nah, itu ada di dokumen pelelangan dan negara mana yang eligible untuk mengikuti tender ini sudah ada disediakan di dokumen kontrak. Jadi persyaratannya hampir sama, hanya saja ketika untuk kontraktor yang internasional dia harus membuktikan bahwa dia berasal dari negara yang menurut Adb dia eligible mengikuti tender proyek ini. Contoh yang PP lakukan untuk bidding, saat ini kita juga sedang membidding proyek Adb yang ada di Filipina. Dan kita amati bahwa persyaratannya juga tidak terlalu jauh beda, hanya saja kita tetap menambahkan bahwa kita membuktikan bahwa negara Indonesia eligible untuk membidding di Filipina. Mungkin cukup itu saja. Terima kasih.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Bahtiar atas informasinya. Jadi sebenarnya apa yang dilakukan oleh PP Persero adalah tadi sudah dijelaskan oleh Pak Erik di awal tadi ya terkait dengan water treatment itu ya Pak ya, dan memang sudah jelas aturannya di guideline-nya gitu ya Pak ya.
Ya, ada di guideline.
Thank you, Mr. Effendi. I think I just last warning from the committee that we already reached the 11:30. I think we should stop now because we already gathered all the questions, and I think we're gonna send the email about the questions and the answers that were probably written by our speakers later on. And because we still have one more from Ibu Dwi, I think thank you so much for all of the speakers that already participate in today's event. Probably virtual applause for all of us. And I will get back to Mbak Sasti, the Master of Ceremony for today. Mbak Sasti,
Yeah.
over
Thank you,
to
Pak
you.
Theo. Yeah, thank you, Pak Theo. And also thank you to all the speakers, moderator, and participants. We got an amazing information and sharing of extraordinary experiences and discussions. Before ending the event this morning, I'm going to introduce all of you to Ibu Dwi Wahyuni Kartianingsih, the Director of Business Climate Development and International Cooperation. Ibu Dwi is in charge in formulating strategies, policies, and guidelines regarding business climate and international cooperation in government procurement. She is also the lead negotiator for Government Procurement Chapter in several FTAs. Ibu Dwi achieved her master's degree in Economics and Public Policy from School of Public Policy and Management, Korea Development Institute, Seoul, Korea. Good morning to Ibu Dwi.
Good afternoon, Mbak Sasti.
Yeah, to Ibu Dwi, the time is yours, Bu.
Ya, terima kasih Mbak Sasti. Bapak Ibu, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Tentunya salam sehat, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Kita sudah sampai di penghujung acara. Untuk itu, pertama-tama tentunya kita bersyukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala yang telah memberikan karunia sehat dan kita dapat berkumpul meskipun dalam virtual pada acara ini, yaitu Seminar Nasional Peluang Usaha bersama ADB, Asian Development Bank. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, kita sama-sama sudah menyaksikan, mengikuti para pembicara dalam seminar ini, dan tentunya kami sangat-sangat berterima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu yang telah menghadiri acara ini, Bapak Ibu dari perwakilan pelaku usaha nasional, kemudian juga asosiasi, kemudian juga ada beberapa rekan-rekan dari kementerian yang juga termasuk dalam memiliki tugas pembinaan pelaku usaha, yaitu ada dari Kementerian Perdagangan, Kementerian Perindustrian, Kementerian Luar Negeri, kemudian Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM, rekan-rekan dari Bappenas, dan juga rekan-rekan dari Kementerian PUPR, dan tentunya rekan-rekan our colleagues from ADB headquarter, also from ADB Indonesia. Bapak Ibu, kegiatan ini merupakan rangkaian seminar atas kerjasama LKPP dengan mitra pembangunan, dan juga tentunya kegiatan ini menunjang Rakornas pengadaan yang akan nanti dilakukan oleh LKPP. Dan sebagai informasi Bapak Ibu bahwa pada tanggal 28 Juli yang lalu kita telah juga melaksanakan seminar yang sama tentang peluang usaha di UNDP, dan saat ini kita memberikan informasi mengenai peluang usaha khususnya proyek-proyek pengadaan barang jasa di ADB, baik di Indonesia maupun di luar negeri. Hari ini untuk sektor transportasi, terus juga untuk sektor air ya, pengairan. Kemudian untuk nanti hari kedua kita akan ikuti untuk sektor pendidikan dan juga urban development. Bapak Ibu, kami percaya, juga kami sangat senang bahwa seminar ini tentunya menambah wawasan buat kita, memberikan pemahaman mengenai cara mencari peluang usaha dan cara berpartisipasi dalam pengadaan barang jasa. Kemudian tentunya dengan demikian Bapak Ibu, kami harapkan kita bisa memiliki kesempatan yang luas untuk memanfaatkan peluang yang ada, berpartisipasi dalam tender bukan hanya dengan pendanaan APBN/APBD, tetapi juga dengan pendanaan dari mitra pembangunan, baik di Indonesia maupun di luar negeri. Dan tentunya kami berharap melalui sharing informasi seperti ini, kita dapat mendorong dan meningkatkan minat Bapak Ibu pelaku usaha nasional untuk ikut serta dalam pengadaan barang jasa internasional. Bapak Ibu, apabila Bapak Ibu pelaku usaha nasional memerlukan informasi lebih lanjut terkait pengadaan barang jasa, dapat bergabung bersama kami di vendor directory kami, yaitu directory.lkpp.go.id, dan framework ini kami siapkan khusus untuk para pelaku usaha nasional yang ingin mengambil atau juga mengetahui informasi terkait pengadaan barang jasa pemerintah. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, sebelum kami menutup kegiatan ini, tentunya kami akan mengucapkan terima kasih, banyak-banyak terima kasih. Pertama tentunya kepada pimpinan kami, Pak Kepala LKPP dan juga Ibu Deputi Bidang Pengembangan Strategi dan Kebijakan Pengadaan Barang Jasa Pemerintah. And special, I would like to give our highest appreciation for Procurement Portfolio and Financial Management Department of Asian Development Bank, especially for Mr. Jeff Taylor as the Director for PFP1 and Mr. Rustam Abdul Qayyumov as the Director for PFP2, also Mr. Stephen Besadi and team, and all presenters from ADB, Mr. James Leather, Mr. Eric, Mr. Joris, and Mr. Brajes, and also Miss Jenny Chu, and of course all the BOS team from ADB, and also Ibu Keiko, Ibu Olga, Ibu Yati, and especially juga kami ucapkan terima kasih yang setinggi-tingginya kepada Bapak Bahtiar Effendi dari PT Pembangunan Perumahan yang telah sharing knowledge Bapak Ibu Bapak kepada kami. Dan ucapan terima kasih yang setinggi-tingginya juga kami sampaikan kepada seluruh peserta yang berasal dari pelaku usaha nasional, asosiasi pelaku usaha, dan tentunya kementerian lembaga, dan juga teman-teman di LKPP yang telah meluangkan waktu untuk menghadiri acara ini. Dan tentunya kami atau saya pribadi mengucapkan terima kasih kepada rekan-rekan di Direktorat Pengembangan Iklim Usaha dan Kerjasama Internasional atas dedikasinya, kerja kerasnya, dan kerja cerdasnya untuk mensukseskan acara ini. Dan Bapak Ibu, sampai bertemu besok pada seminar hari kedua bersama ADB di jam yang sama. Di sana kita nanti akan membahas peluang usaha untuk sektor pendidikan dan urban development atau pembangunan perkotaan dengan fokus ke peluang jasa konsultasi. Demikian Bapak Ibu, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih untuk perhatian Bapak dan Ibu. Salam sehat, salam pengadaan. Kembali ke Mbak Sasti.
Thank you, Ibu Dwi. Also, I would like to say thank you once again to all the speakers, moderator, and participants who have joined and listened to the event from beginning to end. On behalf of the committee on duty, I apologize for the wrong words and actions. Also, another reminder for all of you that we still have the second day of Business Opportunity Seminar with ADB that will be held tomorrow. The Zoom link will still be the same, and see you tomorrow. Finally, thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
you.